This is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo, still not going out anywhere. How are you?
I'm good. Good enough anyway. Just a little tired as always.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, as it's been for the past 2 months, even though I don't go out much, I'm really busy.
Yeah. I think that's about the same for everybody these days.
Online day job. I've got my online private teaching. I've got some proofreading work. I've got podcasts. And then all the other things that I haven't had time to do because of those things.
By the way, just a little bit off topic, but they've rescinded the stay-at-home, request in Tokyo. Are you going to now run through the streets and kiss everybody's hands and shake everybody's baby?
I don't know. I really haven't changed my behavior much. I am probably going to finally see my girlfriend again,
Nice.
although in a couple of weeks. But otherwise, I don't know. I haven't really thought about changing my behavior. I mean, it's not like the virus is gone. So
Okay.
we'll all have to be somewhat careful still until things are really changed as far as the virus.
Yeah, I understand that they're doing a three-part kind of, I don't know what to call it. We weren't actually locked down. We were requested to stay home, but the shops and whatnot were locked. So they're going to reopen them in stages. The first stage, of course, being the schools because, tested on the kids. But the second phase, I think, is gyms and movie theaters. And then the third phase is the bars.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're still in phase one, but yeah, there it is.
I wonder when Black Widow's coming out.
That's pretty much it. Yeah,
that's every time somebody mentions movies, that's my first question. When's Black Widow coming out?
Didn't they slate it for November
I believe so.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's worldwide, but who knows what the situation's going to be in November?
Yeah, true. They're expecting second wave and whatnot, but second wave, third wave. America seems to be having a rough go of it regardless, but Japan seems to be pretty mild right now. Yeah. But they won't release any of those films unless the market in America is open. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. So we got a comic to critique. It's called Mythic Creature Trainer. And this is by someone we've heard from before, Rene Pfitzner, a guy from Australia. He's actually kickstarting this comic as we speak, and it should still be going when this comes out next week. And so I told you it was 2 years. It was actually 1 year ago. We talked about his comic called Sneaky Goblins.
I do remember it.
Critiquing Comics 156. Yeah, I didn't listen to it, but looking at the blog blurb for that episode, it reminded me that we had trouble finding any characters we could sympathize with in that comic because everybody was stealing and training to be an assassin and all this kind of stuff. That isn't such a problem in this comic, I wouldn't say. The central character is this guy Ulrich, who seems much less likely to kill anyone. He seems like a kind of little bit dopey guy, maybe. I mean, he's got some skills with animals. He is a mythic creature trainer, after all. But maybe not the best social skills. I did think this story seemed to be in the same universe as Sneaky Goblins.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Mm-hmm. I didn't go back and look at Sneaky Goblins much, but I felt like there might have been one or two characters that were showing up from that. And the one character, Kevin, seems to be a goblin from that same race of goblins. Written and drawn by Rene, except the second story, there's a backup feature drawn by Jake Kalsbeek, which I thought was kind of interesting that it crosses over with the main story. Has a couple of characters in common, although I thought that maybe they should have worked a little bit more closely on the looks of the characters, because they don't really look enough similar that I immediately thought, oh, that's the same character.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the main story, the art's really accomplished, and I didn't have any problems with the storytelling. I thought that was all fine. There were a few little things in the story that bothered me, but I'll let you talk. What did you think of this?
I thought the drawing was pretty smooth and even for the most part. There were a couple of points here and there where I thought, okay, that could have been done a little bit better. But for the most part, I thought it was nice. The coloring is excellent, and I see that he's beginning to use a lot more texture in some of his rendering. There was the imagination sequence on page 12 and page 13. And we also see in the chapter break, or I guess the at the end of the first comic, before the first comic, the second comic, there's this picture of a dragon flying with its baby. There seems to be like a pencil texture kind of riding under the colors of the bigger dragon, which is just kind of a nice subtle touch. So the coloring was very well done. And I thought that was a neat trick that I would like to do myself. But yeah. For the second story, I thought that the coloring was a little more subdued, but of a similar style. I don't know if it's the same colorist, if Rene colored this one as well. And Jake just drew the black and white line art.
Yeah, it doesn't say.
Yeah, it does have a different feel, a different style. But it's very curious because there's setup of the story in the first part, but this story kind of weaves in this interesting underline or under, I don't know, it's a subplot. It's an interesting way of adding depth to the first story. And it's curious that there's a second artist doing it. Like, he really wants to separate this part from that part. There's absolutely no reason why Rene couldn't have drawn this himself. He seems to be, and I only say this by the speed, the feeling of speed through his drawings. I don't know how fast he actually draws, but it seems that he could have drawn this himself in kind of a quick fashion. So my question is, why use a backup artist? Unless it has something to do with the actual execution of the story somehow. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too, mostly. I felt like the story took a little too long to get going. We don't really get to the story until like page 16. And the part before that, I mean, I guess it's some just character building, world building, but I don't know, it seemed to me it took a little bit too long to get to it. Also, that dream sequence you mentioned, I wasn't quite sure what to make of that. I mean, he's running around on that creature, riding that creature, and they jump off a cliff, and then it appears that the creature sprouts wings, but that's just, his dream? He seems to be convinced that it's happening, I don't know. Is he on drugs? I don't know. I wasn't sure why he was so convinced that that was really happening.
I have no idea with that one. Perhaps he was hoping, and then he realized that's not what's happening. But yeah, I didn't mind it so much. I did think it was well. Now that you mention it, I feel that it is a little bit weird, but it's not. It's okay, I guess.
Who would you say this comic is for? Who's the intended audience?
That's a good question. The comic is kind of light, but it has this point of intrigue that you would find in comics for older kids. But my feeling about comics for kids, because I'm assuming that this is for kids, is that kids are not dumb. And they can follow a story like this. There are a few points where I think the vocabulary is a little bit adult for a kid project, but yeah, I think it could be for kids, young readers.
Yeah, certainly without the element of assassins, it's maybe a little bit better for kids than Sneaky Goblins was.
True. The characters are simple. They're very simplistic in their thinking, but the plot and the structure of it is a little more complex, which is a little bit interesting. I don't think that they would have trouble following this, but it depends on how old the kid is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think? Is it for kids, for adults?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were like 10 years old or something, I could get into this.
Yeah, I would say there's one thing that I feel is a little bit underwritten, and that is the main character. Sorry, what's his name again?
Ulrich.
Ulrich, yes. He seems to be a goof, and he's living with this roommate, and he's trying to make rent. And so the roommate and Ulrich, it's kind of a weird relationship in that, it's kind of Chekhov's couple rule. You know what I mean?
You mean you expect that they're going to get together at some point?
Well, that's the rule.
I don't know. She seems too smart for him.
Yeah, she does. But the roommates, and so what's the deal here? It should be kind of like, she has her own life, her own thing, her own whatever. Or why would she room with this guy who can barely pay rent when she's clearly much more able? Because not only is she a guard at the palace, she also can do potions. So it's kind of like a grown adult rooming with a high school student. And it's kind of why is this because even if they're not dating, there is something to roommates kind of being a fit for each other on a certain level. And so it seemed kind of weird. He's a little too dumb, or he is a little too young. For most heroes, there's that the lie the hero believes, or some other problem that they have to realize their way through, or the hero has a want. But here it seems that he doesn't really have a want. He just wants to live his life, do his thing. He's not a an animal. What is it? Animal trainer.
Mythic Creature Trainer.
Mythic Creature Trainer. He's not a Mythic Creature Trainer by design, by himself. He is a Mythic Creature Trainer by way of shitty part-time job, which seems just also a little bit off.
So you mean he doesn't really seem driven? He's just kind of doing whatever.
Yeah, he's doing whatever,
wandering through life.
Yeah, and his goal isn't longer than next month's rent, which seems a little bit underwritten for this character. So the Goblin Kevin is a little bit deeper written, but there's still the question of, well, why though is he going to go through all of this? I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, but let's just say, he makes some decisions in the book that seem a little bit crafty at first, but dumb later. And my question is, well, why did he do that? What was the point of that? Yeah, I guess in general for each character that's presented in the book, there's a but why and how kind of question. So the setup itself is fine. The plot as it goes is fine, and the subplot backup story is kind of an interesting way to add to the main story. It kind of breaks up the action and it offers some detail. And to be honest, the main character of that story I like a lot more.
Yeah. She's kind of seems to be like a teenage girl or something. She seems a little, Sophie the Spy is the name of the story. And it does seem like she's got a little bit more oomph to her. Like she's more kind of pushing forward in life and not just kind of wandering around.
Yeah. And she saw a problem and she's trying to deal with it. And even though other people are not listening to her, she's a person of action, and she is trying to make sure that it is taken care of. And so in that sense, I'm much more on her side.
Yeah.
Because the problem is she realized there's a plot against the kingdom and she is going to try and fix it, even though she is a person who is not believed by anyone else. And so, yeah, I'm much more interested in her journey than the main guy, simply for the fact that she's a little bit more together, and the first guy seems to be a little bit more of an idiot.
Yeah, well, Ulrich, like even so he's got this friend that he kind of happens to run into a couple of times in the story, and in one case the guy has stolen jam from somebody, and Ulrich's just kind of like, oh, yeah, I see. Well, whatever. And he doesn't really, even give an opinion about that. Like, oh, you shouldn't steal or something like that. Just like, oh, well, okay. And then which moves on. See you later.
Yeah, very much.
Which doesn't speak so well of him.
Yeah, and mind you, this is issue 1, and we're setting up for other things. So the assumption is that this is all going to pay off later somehow. But the setup for Ulrich is a little bit weak, and the setup for, what's her name, Sophia the Spy?
Yeah, Sophie the Spy.
Yeah, the Sophie story, which is a backup, is actually a stronger story. So it'll be interesting to see how these things continue forward and how they develop. The story itself is fine, but like I said, Sophie is my focus.
I notice on the back page. No, it's not even the back page. It's a page after the story ends. It mentions that Sophie the Spy connects this book to Sneaky Goblins somehow. I'm not quite sure. I don't think I ever finished Sneaky Goblins, but in some way it connects the stories. So yeah, it's definitely the same universe.
Wasn't there a spy school in Sneaky Goblins?
Maybe so.
Yeah, I seem to remember something like that.
By the way, as an old guy,
what?
As an old guy, I couldn't help noticing. So, I mean, when I was growing up, the idea of male and female housemates was not really acceptable, and you certainly wouldn't have seen it in an all-ages book like this. So it just was interesting to me. I mean, clearly, at least in this point in the story, there's nothing going on between Ulrich and Felka, his housemate. And she doesn't seem that into him at all. And he doesn't even seem to think about such a thing either. But even so, I mean, it would have raised eyebrows 30, 40 years ago. But yeah, it's nothing now.
Yeah. I'm kind of okay with it. She's the housemate seems to be about her own business, and she's. It's more like she's watching him rather than actually partnering with him to share a house. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But I find the term "old guy" mildly off-putting, being that our ages aren't that different. But I would say an older gentleman.
Yeah, I've embraced it.
Oh, well, consider
I'm an old
this.
fogey. Certainly compared to Rene is clearly younger than us.
Most likely. But consider this. Old is something that has no use. Older is something that's mature.
Okay.
And that's my only distinction.
Okay.
My only needed distinction. So anyway, as an older gentleman, I find this comic to be acceptable.
Okay.
If you like it, support it on the Kickstarter. Go check it out over there. If anything we've said resonates with you, look at his graphic novel Sneaky Goblins. And
it's all online.
Yeah, that one is somewhat fun. I think we had some minor problems with it, but Rene is building quite a bit here, and it seems that this is all part of the same story. And it looks like he has a lot of different titles under the same Chronicles of Windfirth chronology. Sorry, not chronology. Chronicles of Windfirth. But anyway, check it out, and I think you won't be too disappointed.
Yeah. Okay. Check the show notes for links to Rene's site and his Kickstarter. More with Mulele coming up. I'm continuing to republish classic episodes of Deconstructing Comics in reverse order, unlocked by our patrons' generous support. This week I'll republish number 55 from December 25th, 2006, in which Brandon and I discuss Will Eisner's interview with Jack Kirby. Find the classic episodes on our Facebook and Twitter feeds by choosing the earliest months listed in the sidebar pull-down menu at deconstructingcomics.com, in publicly available posts on our Patreon page, or in the Patreon smartphone app. Classic episodes have been unlocked back to number 46, so classic episode re-releases will stop in 9 weeks unless we meet our next Patreon goal. And you can help make our Fullmetal Alchemist podcast a reality as well. Check out all our goals and help us reach them at patreon.com/deconcomics.
You like cheap comic books, right? Well, I'm Professor Allen, and I talk about cheap comic books on the Quarterbin podcast. In every episode, I'll dissect a single comic from my collection, as long as I paid no more than 25 cents for the issue. Forget about $4 new comics that you can read in 4 minutes, or crossover events that can cost $100 to collect. Join me in the Quarterbin, where even bad comics are a bargain, and good ones are a steal. The Quarterbin podcast is part of the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network. Visit us at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search Relatively Geeky or Quarterbin Podcast in iTunes. I guarantee it'll be worth every penny.
Do we have anything else to talk about? I certainly didn't think of anything.
Well, I did want to plug my other podcast, if you don't mind. It's not
sure,
a rival
go ahead.
thing, but
okay. Mulele's going to plug his podcast. Go.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I started a podcast with 2 other comic artists. Sorry, not that you're not a comic artist. You're not active.
Yeah, I'm an inactive comic artist.
Yeah, with 2 other active comic artists called Tokyo Comics Attack. And basically, we do a lot of stuff on technique of comics, what we're currently fighting to do, how we're trying to push into comics as a business. It's kind of a learn as we go podcast. But we're also along the way talk about our inspirations, and we review a couple of things here and there. And occasionally we comment on the news. That's it. Oh, I should say that the other two comic artists are Oscar, who I think is guested on this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, both of them talked about Akira with us a few months ago.
Yeah. So Oscar and Chris. Oscar is, I'm sure he would like me not to say this, but he is from Europe. That's as far as I'll go with it. He's a very private person. Doesn't want me to say his last name or anything about him. Is very curious, but yeah. And the other person, Chris, is from the States, from New Jersey, but he's lived in Germany for several years, and he has been living in Japan for several years. Interestingly,
we first met him at the comics. What was that? What was that? Oh, the International
Kaigai Manga Fest.
Kaigai, yes. Blah.
Yeah,
my brain's not working. Kaigai, yes.
Yeah. We first met him there, and he's been around for years. He's had some ups and downs, but man, that guy draws like a beast. And that's the thing that I'm trying to glean from him is how can I draw like a beast? How can I stop being a lazy bastard?
So you're talking about his pace, his rate of production?
Yeah. And it used to be that I felt his drawing style was a little bit unstable. Sometimes there'd be some choices in his artwork or in his line work or something that I was like, okay, but why this? Why that? But as I've asked him these questions directly, he's kind of addressed them one by one. And the work that he's putting online now is amazing. The color, the composition, the design of the characters. He's really kind of focused on those things. And it's quite amazing to look at now, especially his colors, which just really shine and make his artwork glow. So check him out. But the three of us are making a podcast together. It originally started as kind of let's just hang out online and talk because we're all stuck in this kind of Corona lifestyle. But it's solidified into this project. We have yet to meet in person, but for the podcast anyway. But hopefully sometime soon.
Okay, so and I should mention again, I've been trying to push this hard. We're trying to get our Patreon to the goal to release the Full Metal Alchemist podcast that Patrick and I are starting, called the Law of Equivalent Exchange. So check out our Patreon, patreon.com/deconcomics, and support us to get to that and other goals.
Yeah, so what is the goal? Like number of patrons or a monetary goal?
It's a monetary goal.
Okay.
And we've moved a little bit closer to it, but we still need some more supporters. So, and actually, Patrick and I recorded the first 3 episodes like back in March. And I've finally started editing the first one, but they're kind of sitting there, and I'd like to get them out there, but so if you'd like us to critique your comic, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on this show. So any last words?
No, that's pretty much it. Nope.
Okay. All right. So everybody stay safe, wash your hands. We'll be back next time we have a comic to critique. So this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. Our theme is from bensound.com. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, Kumar and Jordan discuss several Warren Ellis books, Black Summer, No Hero, and Super Gods. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.